He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
You know, there's not much worse than being a leader and realizing, or at least feeling like, the discovery that you are pretty much doing this on your own. When the problems come, when the challenges come, when you got somebody in your group who's a little bit defiant, a little rebellious, a little destructive, that you got nobody to back you up. You just have them and anybody they can gain support from coming against you. That's a very lonely feeling, and that's what many leaders mean when they say it's lonely at the top. But good leaders rally together, they take care of each other, they look out for each other because they know what the demands of leadership look like. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I've been in those situations where I feel like I'm all on my own. Nobody else is paying attention to what's going on. Nobody cares what the struggles or the challenges are. Everybody's coming against me. They want a pay raise. They want better time. They want, fewer hours. They don't want to work as hard. And the more we see the shift in generations, I've worked with some guys that are 5, 10, 20 years my senior who work like you wouldn't believe. They make me feel lazy by the time the day is over. But I've also worked with some young guys that are 5, 10, 15, 20 years my junior that can't make it to lunchtime at the same work pace that I do. And I'm not like some of the old guys. That work ethic, that demand of yourself, that expectation that you place on you, it's massive. The recall and the requirement to be the kind of person that pushes through, that gets it done, that's demanding. And it requires a lot of you to pull it off. But when you've got a team around you that says, I'm not willing to work that hard, it's bad enough to have one person who, they kind of don't really want to do it. And so they tell you, I'm going to get that task done, but then they don't. Or they show up and they kind of do it, but they know they're doing it with the quality of work that's going to require someone to do it again. Chances are that someone is going to be you. Why? Well, because everybody else on the team is going to go, it's not my job. I didn't mess it up. I wasn't told to do it in the first place. Why should I have to redo their work? So what does that mean? That means you, as the leader, as the manager, you're going to be responsible for it. Because if you don't fix it, nobody's going to fix it. And in the end, who's accountable? Well, you are. You're the one that's got to get it right. You're the one that's got to get it done. And that's the challenge. The other challenge is often having those people on your team that, they agree to do it, and they try to do it, but their level of incompetence is staggering. It's not that they didn't make an effort. That's a whole different kind of sabotage. They actually did try. They're just not properly trained to do what you asked them to do. Well, whose fault is that? Well, that would be yours as well. And so sometimes you have those who are willing to do it, they agree to do it, and they're just not competent at it. Sometimes you have those who are willing to do it on paper or in their words, but their activity, their action actually isn't there. They're not actually going to get the job done. They're not going to do the work. they're going to give you lip service, for lack of a better term, and they're not going to finish the project that you've assigned them to. Well, that's a tough place to be as a leader. What's tougher, though, is when the leaders that are your peers or the leaders that are above you, your superiors, those that you answer to, that you report to, don't understand that the challenge you have isn't your incompetence. It's that the people that you're leading are not doing their job. Now, I can recall a time, I believe it was John Maxwell and Jack Welch had the conversation. I've read it in a couple of different books, and I think they've all been by John Maxwell, if I'm not mistaken. He said, Jack, when you come in to overhaul a company, when they've brought you in as the hatchet man to chop up what's left of a leadership team, how do you decide who goes and who stays? Or which ones do you look at and say, well, these are competent leaders, they're going to do a great job. I just need to tweak a little bit about what they're doing. I mean, do you start at the top and work all your way down? How do you decide who stays and who goes? And Jack's answer was profound. He said, oh, that's not a hard decision. They all go. Every leader is out. And John said, well, is there not a chance that there's a good leader among them who hasn't been given the opportunity, or a good leader among them that could make a change, a good leader among them that has great potential? He said, look, if they were a great leader, the problem wouldn't have got bad enough for me to fix it. They would have influenced it from the inside and made the changes necessary, or they would have left. So if they're still here and the problem is that bad, they're not a good leader. If they were a good leader, they would have already corrected it. Now, that's a profound statement when you stop and think about the number of times you've been in a leadership role and you've been tasked with managing people, leading people, directing people who just don't care. Maybe it's apathetic. Maybe it's ignorant. Maybe it's unwilling to cooperate because they thought they were going to have the job you have. My son recently was in a position to take over a new management position. He's a young guy in his early 20s. It's a good opportunity for him. And I said, let me just give you a little heads up about that kind of process, because I was doing exactly the same thing, taking over a retail management position at about 25, 26 years old. And there was a young person who worked in the same location who really thought the promotion should have been theirs. They were thoroughly convinced, I'm qualified, I've been here longer, I've done a better job, I should get this role. And they were really disappointed when I got the role. The result was they did everything they could to sabotage me. Oh, they would do exactly what I've been talking about. They would agree, oh yes, I'll get that job done. Absolutely, I'll get that job done. And the minute I turn my back, they're not just not getting the job done, they're sabotaging the process of getting the job done. They're losing bits and pieces of what needs to be done so that you can't actually finish the job at all. Or if you do finish it, it's guaranteed to be wrong because part of the steps haven't been taken. Little things like, yeah, we're going to do this print job. It's 2,500 pages, but it's duplex. And I'm going to print it as a single. Meaning, instead of finishing 2,500 pages printed front and back, I'm going to finish 5,000 pages printed on one side. Well, now we're out of paper to match the job. And so not only did we not get it done right, we cannot fix it. We can't redo it because we're out of paper. We have to order new paper to match the job in order to finish the job. And if that's something like a client's letterhead that's already been foil embossed, you're pretty much toast. And they knew that. And it's why they did it. Because they knew that it would never come back on them personally. It would come back on me as the leader. And they figured, well, the faster I get rid of them as the manager, the faster I get the job. It took me 5 or 6 attempts to be able to fire the individual who is intentionally sabotaging jobs, intentionally causing people who worked for me to leave, intentionally creating drama and trouble within the workplace. But see, when I say that leaders take care of each other, here's what happened. I finally had a chance because he decided to complain to his buddy who happened to be the district manager, and his buddy said, well, I'm going to sit down for lunch with the owners of the company and I'm going to tell them how bad this manager is that they hired. But I had an ally that they didn't realize was an ally. The guy who actually hired me, the COO of the company, was at that same lunch. And in the middle of the lunch, he called me. He said, "Can you get away from the store?" And I said, "I can." He said, "You need the right to defend yourself, so I'm going to challenge you to come up here right now where we're having lunch and join us for this lunch because they're throwing you under the bus pretty bad." And so I went and I answered all their charges and I explained the reality of what was happening. And I went through a list of 10 or 12 jobs for clients that cost thousands of dollars that were lost business and potentially lost clients. And I said, here's what really happened. And the behavior was indefensible. And the guy who was working hard to get me fired lost his job. And the district manager nearly lost his because he was a blind ally or a co-conspirator. It's hard to tell which. Leaders look out for each other because they know that kind of nonsense isn't a one-off. It hasn't been one time in my life in leadership that a circumstance like that, a relationship like that, a coworker like that popped up. There are humans all over the planet who behave the same way. Some of them make it into government and politics. Some of them make it in retail management. Some of them make it in sales organizations. Some of them are entrepreneurs. And you'll find that they behave the same way when they subcontract for someone they don't like. They behave the same way when they contract for a client that they don't want to see the client succeed. I know that sounds like a stretch. It sounds like, who would be such an evil person? Trust me, they're out there. And as leaders, part of your responsibility, especially as you raise up other leaders, is to realize they're going to face these challenges. They're going to face these struggles. They're going to deal with people who are already convinced they're better than the leader you're training. They should have had the opportunity and not the leader you're training. They're more competent, more qualified, more educated, and doggone it, people like me. And they will do everything in their power to see to it that the people you raise up to be in power lose their opportunity, lose their foothold, lose their relationships. As a leader, especially as a leader who has raised someone up, mentored them, they've been your protege, if you want to call it that. They've been the person who's like, okay, I need your advice on this. I need a tip on this. How do I handle this? If you've got people like that in your life, know for a fact those people are going to be under attack from other people who feel like, I haven't put in the same amount of time, but doggone it, that should be my job. That should be my role. That should be my advantage. That should be my opportunity. That should be my pay raise. And because they feel that way, because they believe that way, that attitude will seep into their work. Now, let me take that one step further. People who have that kind of attitude at work, they almost never let it stop at their desk. Think that through because you know it's true. It's happened in your life. Maybe it was you. But see, when we get a bitter attitude, when we get a little put off, when we feel like we've been taken advantage of, when we feel like we didn't get the best opportunity, as humans, we tend to, well, let me say it like this. Misery loves company. Misery doesn't love company, meaning it goes around looking for other miserable people. While that does sometimes happen, here's what does happen. Misery spreads like a dump truck of emotional garbage being dumped on your desk on a regular basis because misery looks to make other people miserable. It's just true. It's horrible, but it's true. Misery looks to make other people miserable because misery loves company. Misery wants to draw you into their drama. People who feel like they've been cheated, they want you to feel like you've been cheated too. People who feel like they've been taken advantage of, lied to, manipulated, they want you to feel the same way. Why? Because misery loves company. They want everyone to feel like, well, you've been had, just like I've been had, because nobody wants to feel like they're the sucker. There are a few times that you'll find somebody who buys a car, and after all the research and all the investment, they drive home with the car and they tell their neighbors, that was the worst investment I ever made. There are very few people who are actually willing to do that. Same with their house, same with their college education, same with their tuition, same with their choosing of the job. They're very unlikely to say to you, I think I made a bad decision. Instead, they're more likely to say to you, I made the greatest decision, you should make the same thing. I bought XYZ vehicle, you should have one just like it. And there are people who will run out there because so-and-so said you need to have a vehicle like this. They'll run out there and buy one just like it. They trust them. They've gone down the whole path with them. They believe, you're right, that's the best vehicle in the world. I should have one just like it. I should have 2 or 3 of them. And now this misery loves company concept is infectious. In your workplace, one person who says, I've been worked too many hours and I didn't get the right overtime pay. I don't get a high enough commission level. They almost never stop with themselves in the complaint. They'll go recruit other people to feel like the same complaint is true. If you think I'm crazy, read Woke Inc. by Vivek Ramaswamy. Read Woke Inc. by Vivek Ramaswamy. And you'll find in his book that he talks about how as a multi-billionaire who built his company with a couple of dollars in his pocket as a first-generation immigrant to the United States, he worked his tail off to become successful and became very, very successful. I saw a video clip from him the other day where he said, if I looked at all the people in my school, my high school, there was not one other, because he's a very dark-skinned, I believe he's from India, I could be mistaken, very dark-skinned guy. He said there's not one other person of color that I went to high school with who could not have achieved everything I achieved. That is a bold statement. But see, we also know the converse is true. There are a lot of people who will say, because my life sucks, I've been arrested too many times, I've been thrown in prison, the pipeline to prison, the racial injustice, whatever it is, whatever excuse they make for themselves, they want to cast that excuse on thousands of other people, perhaps millions of other people. They want others to feel like they've been disadvantaged as well. When Vivek Ramaswamy had a multi-billion-dollar company, and he refused to follow the company line, if you will, the politically correct way of looking at the world, people in his company rose up against him until they finally, in order to save the company and keep it from falling apart completely, he resigned from the company he built. From the board, from his role as president and CEO, left the company altogether. Because misery loves company, and those people in the company who wanted to complain about the fact that he wouldn't say what they wanted him to say, he wouldn't do the things he wanted him to do, he said, I shouldn't have to do that. That doesn't make any sense for me. But the pressure seeping through his company, because misery loves company, he made a deal with the board and say, I want the company to stay alive, so I'm going to step out so the company can stay alive. Leaders take care of each other. Leaders understand this is not a one-off. This is going to happen throughout the course of your life. And as you raise up new leaders, as you serve alongside other leaders, be aware that this misery loves company, this impaled drama, they will run you through with an emotional spear. They will, especially now with the advent of social media, they will destroy you and your reputation. It used to be a letter to the editor from time to time would be enough to break the emotional back, if you will, of a leader of a small business and a small community. Now you don't even have to be bold enough to write a letter to the editor. You can anonymously post something on social media, and if it goes viral, they're toast. We know that. As leaders, the ability to recognize the real drama, the real missteps, the real mistakes of a leader from the disgruntled employee who knows that misery loves company, who's looking for anybody to be their ally in their atrocious dismantling of somebody else's leadership. As a leader, you should be able to recognize that. As a leader, you should be able to determine the difference between this person's just out to get them because they have some of their axe to grind, or this leader really failed in this area. And as a leader, you should step alongside that leader and go, let's talk about this. If you really failed in this, here's what you need to correct. Here's where you need to come clean with yourself and with the people that you lead and those that you've impacted, and let's fix it. And if that's not what it is, if this is just malicious, maleficent behavior from a disgruntled employee or someone who has an axe to grind or somebody who simply wants your chair, then let's deal with that in a different way. But the last thing we should do as leaders is go, oh, wow, that one's under a lot of pressure. They're about to be hit by a bus. Everybody run from the bus. No, leaders should step up next to each other and go, okay, you brought this bus on yourself. Let's take the bus. Let's figure out how we're going to survive through this. I'm in this with you. I see the mistakes you made. I recognize it was a bad decision, but this is overcomable. Or I see that you're being unfairly attacked, and I'm going to stand beside you until the attack is over. That's what good leaders do, especially for those they've raised up as leaders. And a leader who's not willing to do that should not be your mentor. If you're a leader and you're not willing to do that for the people you've raised up, you should not be a mentor. If you're a leader raising up other people and you're not willing to go to bat for them when they've either made a mistake or come under attack for something they did not do, if you don't have the moxie in you to stand alongside them and fight either way, you're in the wrong role. You're in the wrong role. There's another opportunity out there for you, but leading people shouldn't be it, in my humble opinion. I challenge you as a leader to look at those that you've raised up, those that you've inspired, those that you've brought along the way, and ask yourself, am I here to stand with them when they're under senseless and unfair attack? Am I here to correct them when they're under attack that they've deserved and brought on themselves? Or am I going to run at the first sign of trouble? And now that's all about your grit. It's about your leadership capacity and your leadership competence. If you've raised them up, just like you would defend your child, you should defend those that you've trained to lead as well. Take the time to ask yourself in an honest assessment, is that me? Is that who I am? Is that the kind of leader I am? And if not, let's talk. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.
Thank you.